All right, everybody, welcome again to the HARDI Unitary Report Q2 2017 update and website overview webinar. Before we get started here, just a couple administrative notes. We will be taking questions. We'll save them for the end, but if you have any burning questions, please feel free to type them into the questions box. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible at the end, and we're going to leave plenty of time for questions. My colleague Tanika, who hopefully some of you got the chance to meet at the Sales and Marketing Conference earlier this week, will be taking a look at those, and then we will go over those at the end. Just so everybody knows, the data we'll be looking at and the website we'll be looking at is part of the Unitary reporting effort, which is a partnership between HARDI and DNR International. Data is collected from distributor members on a monthly basis, and all data used in this presentation is from that effort. The project started all the way back in 2013, and we have been growing membership ever since. For any distributors on the line that are not currently yet participating, there'll be plenty of information on how to get started after we go through the overview of Q2 and also what you get for actually participating in this program. For those of you on the line who haven't had a chance to meet me yet, I am Dan Vita. I am HARDI's Unitary Market Analyst, and I'm also DNR International's Manager in Data Analytics. I've been involved in this program going on 5 years now, since the very beginning, and had the privilege of watching it grow and working with a number of you over the years. We'll be going over a couple things in this presentation. I'm going to start actually by showing some of what comes out of this process. So we're going to start with going over some national results. After we go through some of the national results, I'm actually going to show the live portal that any participant in this program that is already participating actually has access to. We're going to go through some of the features of that website, how to use it, what is included, what isn't included. We're also going to go through, we introduced a number of updates for the Q2, some of which may have gone unnoticed by current participants, so we're going to go ahead and point those out to everybody. And then we're also going to talk about future plans for the website. We certainly have some big plans for this later this year, not the least of which is state level data, which we'll talk more about later. And finally, we'll end with questions and answers on either the data, how to participate, or anything else that might be on anybody's mind. We're planning on this webinar taking about 20 minutes, so we'll have ample time for questions and answers. And if there isn't a ton, you'll definitely get some time back in your day, which I certainly never mind, and hopefully you don't either. So let's talk about the national results first for our 4 major product categories that we tracked with this program. The first one of those is ACs, and what you're looking at in front of you is 2016 Q1 and Q2 sales versus 2017 Q1 and Q2 sales. You're looking at the efficiency breakdown of ACs, the nominal SEER of the condensing unit, which is what we track through this program. You can see a couple things right away and 2 big trends that we pulled out in the first half of this year. First, you can see there was actually growth compared to Q1 and Q2 of last year, which is always a good thing. That growth ended up coming out right around 10.8% through the first 2 quarters. So that would be same quarter sales versus the previous year. You'll also notice, and this is a trend, if any of you attended the webinars last year, we had just started to mention, and we wanted to know if this was actually going to continue going forward. Last year in 2016, we actually saw in particular in those regions not affected, or all regions were affected, but those regions that still were allowed to sell nominal SEER 13 equipment, we actually started to see for the first time summer of last year, SEER 14 equipment being sold at higher volumes. And we were actually wondering if that was something that was going to continue into the following year, if it was just an anomaly. Well, certainly through the first 6 months of this year, that has appeared to be the case. We've continued to see that trend. It isn't complete yet, but there has certainly been more and more sales of that SEER 14 unit where it isn't a requirement. This has particularly occurred in regions that were bordering that SEER 13 and SEER 14 regions, so those that were bordering north and southern regions. We've also seen this fairly robust growth, though I will say, and we can look at this a little bit when we get into the website itself, we saw a little bit of declining growth going into the summer. So certainly not a decline in the market, but the growth rate was slowing down a bit on a month-over-month basis. Other notes here, most of the movement was in fact only in that 13 to 14 category. So otherwise you can see about the same proportion of 16 plus premium efficiency equipment was sold in both years, though obviously total volume of that 16 plus was quite a bit larger just because of the increase in the market size. Another major product category we track is air source heat pumps. For those of you wondering, as we're looking at these four major categories, and we will get to it, we actually both track ductless and ducted, both ACs and air source heat pumps. What you're looking at right now would be the total market. Ductless and ducted, both ACs on the previous slide, and ducted and ductless air source heat pumps on this slide. Here you see as well, we did have growth in same quarter sales, though not as robust as the AC side. Through the first 6 months of the year compared to last year, we came in at about 5% growth to close the quarter two. Similarly here, not a lot of movement in the efficiency bins. Any remaining product in that bottom category is almost completely sold through at this point, if not completely. You can see we did register a very, very small percentage of that 13 product. Just as a quick reminder, all of that product was allowed to be sold through until it was completely through the supply chain. So we expect that to go away in, any day now, and we've had it decrease drastically over the last several months. We expect that to be almost gone at this point. Otherwise, we had fairly consistent values as far as shares of efficiency of equipment. And actually, again, for those of you that attended some of the webinars last year or who participate in this program regularly, you remember we had a little bit of softness in the air source heat pump market, particularly last summer and going into the fall through HARDI distributors. We've seen that start to come back this year, and we've seen actually much more positive growth rates for the first half of the year, certainly. Obviously, we're tracking that through Q3, and Q3 data is still coming in and won't be released until the end of October. So we'll see. There's been a lot going on, whether it's hurricanes. We'll see how all of that has an effect once we go into Q3. But certainly through the first half of the year, the growth has looked better than last year. As far as ductless goes, this has been the case since this program has started, and it continues to be the case here. What we're looking at specifically here is the ductless air source heat pump market. So this would exclude anything that is a cooling only product. Typically those are the single head systems that would be used to cool interior spaces. We're excluding those. They're sort of the minority of products anyway. This is only going to be those that are both heating and cooling product. And what we saw there was continued robust growth in this market. A little bit lower than in previous years. It came in at 11.5% versus same quarter sales in the previous year. But this was a bright spot and continues to be a very fast growth market across the country. Though we have started to see more regional variability. So another part of this program, what we're looking at right now is national, but we also obviously track this stuff down to a much more granular level. One of our other prime categories that we track this down to would be the HARDI regional level. So what you're looking at in front of you are the 7 HARDI regions, and you're looking at an annualized growth rate, so 12 over 12, as of June of 2017. So for the vast majority of the market, we've seen very robust growth through ductless air source heat pumps. We have seen a little bit of a retraction in the central region over the past year, though truth be told, it was one of the standouts before that. So they started at a higher place to lose. We'll see how this trend continues to play out over the next second half of the year here and going into 2018. But there have been differences in regions for a number of factors. Again, similarly, like the Southwest is down. However, different from the Central in this case, that's actually quite a small market still for ductless air source heat pumps. So a lot more variability in that market, somewhat due just to the small size. The smaller you're starting off, the more the growth rates tend to fluctuate either up or down in a given quarter. Last but not least, before we actually jump into the website itself and take a look at what's available, we do track heating products. So this is a national snapshot of the furnace market for the first 2 quarters of the year. And really the name of the game here has been consistency. We have said that a number of times, I know, on these webinars, but that has occurred again. We had a growth of about 4%, which has generally been what it's been over the past certainly year and a half. And also very consistent efficiency mix. We have nothing really disrupting the market here yet. There's no major rulemakings currently moving forward. And so right now, the market is quite stable and certainly related to the AC part, as most of you on the phone know. ACs, furnaces often act as the air handler piece of the AC, so it does tend to track a little bit, though a little bit more reserved. Also, we haven't quite hit the, whereas we in this data for the cooling side, we started coming into that peak season, which would be June to August and September for most. Peak season for furnaces is October, November timeframe. So I'm certainly more in a wait and see to see how the rest of the year shakes out for heating products. But certainly so far, it looks like the same consistent growth we've seen in the previous years. So that's just a quick overview of what's available to you if you participate in this program. What I'm going to jump over to now is actually to take a look at that online portal and do a quick walkthrough of it, what its use case is, how you can use it, new features, and planned future features. So when you log into the portal as a participant, what you'll see is the blank screen you see in front of you. For a quick navigation, on the left-hand side, we have the selections of all the different product types, efficiency metrics, regions, and date ranges that you can choose to look at, analyze, and export data from. Along the top, we have a couple built-in features, one of which I'll go into is a new feature we rolled out last quarter, which is our dashboard feature. We also have a quarterly report, which actually provides a download of a version of the old Excel report that we used to do through this program that really provides a brief overview of what's happened in the last 4 quarters for all the regions and most major product categories. I'll say the one thing that isn't in that report is ductless air source heat pumps, though that is accessible through the portal itself. So let's take a look at how to use this. First and foremost, if you don't click any regional specificity and you just choose, let's say, a product and efficiency metric and hit search, what you'll get is the national results. So what you see here is the national results through Q2, because that was the last reported quarter we have updated in here. And you'll see a couple things. First is the year-over-year monthly sales growth. You can change that to quarter or year by rolling that up using the bar at the top. So month shows you growth for same month sales. So for instance, if you wanted to look at June versus June of last year for the national market for ACs, we had that at just a little bit down from June of last year. To get a better sense of what the trend may look like, you can roll that back up to the quarter and even further up to the year. The year will give you the growth rate for the individual years compared to the previous year. The one exception to that, and this is actually a change we made just this last quarter, is now the most recent year will just give you up to the date that we have updated. So what you look at for 2017 is actually the first 6 months versus the first 6 months compared to 2017. Going down the page, we have monthly distribution or monthly distribution, quarterly distribution, or yearly distribution of sales by efficiency metric. For here, we're looking at ACs and we have the include SEER button checked, so you can see the nominal SEER and the change of that distribution through the market on the national level. Finally, at the bottom, we have monthly estimated sales, also by nominal SEER in this case, and you can see based on the sales growth and the relative share of equipment, what that actually shakes out into estimated sales. We can do the same thing for a number of different subcategories too. So for instance, if we wanted to look specifically at a product we were looking at earlier, ductless air source heat pumps, we can actually click air source heat pumps, scroll down on this left-hand navigation bar, and actually choose to look at either ducted or ductless equipment. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll look at ductless growth. You can see here already a very different picture from ACs, where we have many, many more SEER bins. We had another change we made this time was we had restricted the max to be 26 plus. Given the products we're seeing coming through the marketplace, particularly in the ductless side, we've extended that to 30 plus at this point, because we have seen enough of those new products come through the supply chain to warrant putting that category on here. You can do the same thing on the ductless side as you could for ACs or any other product category, and roll it up to the quarter or year. You can also examine different regions. So to use an example I brought up earlier, the ACs for SEER, but specifically this case for the northern region, where that was driving a lot of that shift over to the new shift to the 14 SEER, because the South is already pretty much is completely changed out through that the 13 to 14. We can go ahead and take a look how that has actually changed. So the regions we actually provide are those DOE conservation regions, which would be those regions that were directly related to the federal standard that went into effect January 1, 2015 for cooling products. And we can go ahead and hit search. We can then see the change in product over time. It may not be immediately apparent that there has been a shift, and so part of the nice feature of rolling this up is you can actually start to see this very gradual shift in the northern region, where there is no standard saying that you have to have a 14 SEER piece of equipment, and you can see it continues to drift northward. Back in 2014, it was only 4.65% of the market, where we're up to 11.5% of the market so far through 2017. You can also search HARDI regions as well. So if you were specifically interested in the Western region for ACs, you can go ahead and search that and get more specific on what precisely is happening in given regions. And you can also see what has actually changed in those regions in those same breakdowns. While the return, if you select no date, provides you all the information we have going back to 2013, you can also narrow down the time frame. This tends to be particularly useful if you're interested in specific growth rates, or if you just want a particular snapshot in time. So if you wanted to know what just happened in 2016, one way to do that is to select it. Now you'll see we have a warning box that pops up when you select too finite of a time frame to provide a growth rate. When you actually select the growth rate, it's not going to be able to provide some form of growth unless you choose a time frame that has at least 24 months in that time frame. So something more to compare a year over year or month over month analysis. Similarly here though, you can roll this up into the month, quarter, or year. You can also choose to reset any of these search parameters. If you forget what you've selected or want to just start from scratch, you can go ahead and just hit this reset button on the bottom left-hand side here, and you can see it wipes all the selections out. We also have the same sort of features over on the heating side, which includes furnaces and boilers. And you can choose things like efficiency metric, capacity, and fuel type. You can also choose the same regions and dates. The final thing I want to show you before we move on to one of the new features is the export feature. So anything that you're looking at on the screen can actually be also exported to a .xls file or an Excel file for, and that's as simple as actually going ahead and searching for whatever you're interested in here, ACs for SEER in the central region, and you can hit this export function. You can see here it brings up my libraries document, and I can just go ahead and save that. Once I save that and open it up, you can see it actually downloads the graphs and also the data itself if you want to do something with it. On one tab, we have the sales growth, and also we have the other two graphics you saw, plus the actual data that is going to feed those graphs. This would be our market estimates. You can then use that information in your own presentations, your own internal sales analyses, or anything else you might want to do. If you're like me, I always like to really get nitty-gritty and put this into Excel and do some different types of analyses on this sort of information. So we also are consistently and constantly taking feedback and trying to implement improvements to this. One of those that was direct feedback from membership was the ability to see total unit sales or motor bearing unit sales at just with the click of a button. Right now you can see there's no way to combine heating and cooling. And so just to get a sense of what either happened in the last quarter or the last year, we added a dashboard feature. So what I'm clicking on now, this is not actually for the market itself. It would actually be your sales, you as an individual participant versus the market. Here, as far as what is my sales, it's made up. We don't sell anything at DNR, so this is just demonstrative in nature. But as a participant, these two, one of these would represent your sales, while the other would represent the growth of the market. You can also see it gives you a quick picture of what the sales mix look like in your products, and also just total units sold for each quarter. Another feature which we're thinking about rolling out site-wide is the ability to export it in two functions as opposed to just one where we did before, either directly to PDF, as you can see on this hover over, or Excel. And we're also thinking about rolling this feature out, though we'd love your feedback on if this would be useful to download individual graphics as well. So before, that download sort of gave you everything. Here you can choose to download individual graphs either in PDF or Excel. So that was one new feature that came as a direct feedback from the members that participate in this program. If we go back to the market data tab, there's a couple other planned features we already have looking forward to the end of the year. Possibly the most reported information that people want is more granular data, something below the HARDI region, because that would certainly represent more of the markets many of you serve. So we're going to start off by trying to get down to the state level by year's end. You may have noticed the title of the webinar and the invitation, the 20 for 20. We're really pushing to get more participants, because the more participants we get, the more granular we can be. Part of this program is providing the best possible information while protecting the participants' proprietary data. So the more people that we have participating, the lower level we can go while still protecting that proprietary nature of the data that's submitted to us. So we already are planning to move down to state. We'd love a lot more participation. We already think we have the vast majority of states covered, but really we would like to be able to report on every single state in the country, and if possible in the future, even go further than that. So we're really always encouraging people to participate in this program. Other planned features is we're going to be adding in a rolling 12 feature. We had thought we were going to be able to get that in this last quarter. It was a little more challenging than we had originally anticipated, but it's certainly still on our list for the coming up quarters here. I'd also like to take this time to any participants listening on the call right now. Please feel free to give us feedback at any time, whether it's at the end of this webinar and a follow-up email. Your feedback is critical to the success of this and making it useful for you. So that's a brief overview. I'd like to talk a little bit about how to participate before we open it up from questions. So for any distributor, wholesaler member on the line, this program is actually included in your HARDI membership already to participate. The only requirement of the program is that you provide your monthly sales data, and then you get access to this portal, which is updated on a quarterly basis. That really is the only restriction. Otherwise, it is you are already eligible to participate. You can do that by reaching out to any HARDI representative, or certainly emailing the email address you see on the screen, which is maintained by us at DNR here, and we check that one very regularly. So we'd be happy to discuss how to get you all participating. For those people who are already participating, thank you very much. You've made this program to date a huge success, and it couldn't be done without you. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for questions and answers. I'm sure I've been getting questions along the way, so I will we'll take a look at those, and I will pass it over to Tanika to
Our first question is, we wanted to have a review of the ductless growth by region slide, and maybe you can expand on that a little.
Happy to. So let's go back to that slide. So the ductless growth by region, there's a couple things. This is just a snapshot in time. This is annualized through this year. This is one of those markets that's extraordinarily dynamic and changes quite frequently. So I would caution that this is actually one of the benefits of participating is you get to keep certainly your finger on the pulse of this market, because we've had this change quite a bit over the years. As far as I certainly don't want to necessarily get into the business here of prognosticating, but a lot of these certainly downturns, if I had to guess, would be temporary. We have seen these shifts, particularly in the central region. That region has been quite robust in the not too distant past for the air source heat pump market, and all indications in other parts of the country suggest that that's not going away anytime soon. Part of that decline is, I mentioned this early, they had one of our the central region in particular had one of the fastest growing rates for this product through 2013 and 2014. So I view this as a bit of a rebound and not an overall trend at this point. And when I say to put some numbers onto that, it was in the 20+ growth rate for several years. The Southwest, to put a little more color on that one, as far as the estimated ductless sales, for those who aren't familiar with the Southwestern region, that makes up Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. Certainly a much more traditional ducted cooling market. So that market tends to be quite small still at this point. It fluctuates, I would say, far more than some of the other regions where there is a very natural fit for this kind of product. You think the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Great Lakes, a lot of boiler markets, a lot more potentially add-on retrofit markets where it's a great solution for where there is an existing cooling system, but there may be an addition in a house. The Central has those same characteristics in a lot of cases, particularly in the Chicago region, which is why it shares enough similarities with those other very robust growth regions that I don't expect, in my opinion, that would actually continue going forward. Though that is, again, one of the benefits of participating. We actually get to see, we don't have to guess anymore. We actually get to see how this stuff expands going into the future. Additionally, this was actually, particularly through the midstream channel, the distributors, this has been the bright spot, particularly last summer. We saw a little bit of retraction as there was a little bit of buildup in the air source heat pump side, and a market adjustment once the sell-through finally came to pass. We saw growth rates being near zero to negative through the summer last year, just barely, but these sort of regions continue to be robust with, in most cases, double-digit growth rates.
We got another question, and that would be on the dashboard where quarterly sales growth of motor bearing units are reported. Can you define market sales growth? Is this regional or national?
Sure, absolutely. So what that is for the individual participant sales, that would be the sales of the participant, regardless of what region they're participating. So it would be the sum total of all regions. If you're a distributor that has 7 branches in 2 states, it would be your growth for that area. For the market and for the market comparison, that is of the broader market itself. One of the improvements we're thinking about making is going down to state level, is making that more directly comparable to your localized market. So for those nationals that participate, it would be the growth of the region. We would like to make it go down to the growth of the group if possible. That's something that we're working on. That's probably a 2018 rollout, but we are aware that it's not really a direct comparison at this point.
There was a question about if you are a current participant, how do you access the sortable, customizable data? Where do you log in?
Sure. So for current participants, we actually have the website here. So you can see the URL here is www.drintlData.com. When you go to that site, it will return you to a secure version. So you can see that HTTPS in the screenshot we have here. And that will be where you can put your username and password in. For those of you that may have been, don't either have a login yet, but you're a current participant, or you're having login issues, you can feel free to email that HARDI@drental.com with any of those concerns. You can also use the login issues button. If you forget your password or something, you can use that feature to reset your password and get started again.
And we also got a request to email information on sign up email contacts out to the group.
Certainly, we'd be happy to do that. I also have one more question, and I apologize because I certainly should have mentioned this earlier. Going back to the portal, there is one difference between what you're viewing here and what you as a participating distributor would get. What you're viewing here is just simply the market sales data. When you participate in this program, and one of the reasons I can't actually show it to you is because I don't, DNR does not sell anything, and this is sort of our admin account. But as a distributor who does, you would actually get a side-by-side view of what you see. So really it is just splitting the screen in half with your sales on one side and your product mix versus the market itself. So for those that only participate maybe in one region, if you would search, you would still be able to see the market in a different region. So let's say you are a distributor in the Northeast. You could still search the Western region, but no sales would appear for you in the Western region. If you did search the Northeast region, you would see side-by-side comparisons of what your sales volume and sales mix is versus that of that region. That'll also be true once we go down to the state level information, which is why we know that will make it so much more powerful for everyone, and why we're really encouraging everybody to start participating now, just so we can get that data in and have that available to you as soon as that new feature is rolled out. Sure, I actually got one more question here too. What are the benefits and how is this useful? It is a great question. It's a question we actually get all the time. I can give you a couple anecdotes of ways people have used this data in their own business. One is certainly to see how planned or expected market growth or decline has lined up with reality. Many organizations, whether they're suppliers, distributors, often will have their own internal market metrics to understand how maybe it's something as a distributor you're working with your manufacturer to review. Maybe you have your own internal projections itself. This allows you to track in far more real time what's going on in your localized market. Others are just to see what has changed as far as product mix versus what may be happening as far as what you believe you're selling. So for instance, one anecdote I had heard was that obviously SEER, while not a direct proxy, does have a difference in price points. So if unit sales are up but revenues are closer to even, one of the answers to that might be the product mix and change in the product market. So understanding how that is, how it affects your business, and what adjustments may need to be made, this is certainly the best starting place for that. So that's just two quick anecdotes. There's many, many more that I'm sure people use it as. In fact, I'd love to hear more of those stories. I'm always happy to talk about those sort of things. If there are particular ways you're using it, that can often also lead us to ways to improve this website to make it more useful for those purposes. So if it's almost there for something, but not quite, that's something we definitely want to know about. Okay, if there are no other questions, we can end it here. We will certainly follow up with participation information for those on the call that are looking to participate. We really want to thank you for participating today and taking the time to, okay. If you have any other immediate questions, please feel free to follow up us by email, and we will certainly get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you again also to all of the staff at HARDI. They've been extraordinarily helpful. Brian, Emily, John, Talbot, and others. You've really helped us make this program a success, and we really appreciate all the work you've done. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon.
Also, it was from a